Okay, we're live. Hello, I'm Kate Cherry. I'm an independent consultant with a beautiful company called Arbonne International, and I'm joined here today by the wonderful Ali Moore of Be More Limited, isn't it? Be More.
It is Be More Therapy, yeah.
Be More Therapy, that's it. So Ali is a therapist and coach, actually psychotherapist, but therapist and coach. And I've invited her on today to have a discussion about food. And the reason for that is I've been having some thoughts recently about what holds people back. And so just to rewind as to what Arbonne stands for, we have a core belief that everyone can flourish by being good to themselves, their community and the planet. And the way we promote that is through healthy living to improve your mind, your body and skin. So navigating this roller coaster of a time we've had through lockdown, what I've noticed is that coming out of that on social media, you've got lots of people having a health drive and look at my abs now, and I've been doing this completely restrictive thing that, you know, I'm not entirely sure what that's doing to people's bodies, but people are on a mission, I've noticed. And I don't know if that's just my social media, because I spoke to someone yesterday who hadn't noticed that on hers, but it's got me thinking about food and our relationship with food and why it's so challenging for some people, myself included, actually, thinking of my own journey, to make a switch. Or I want to use the word discipline, but that might be the wrong word. And there's conversations I've had with my clients as well about how sometimes some framework really helps them to make a significant change. And that's what we're all about, because we're all about the beyond bit. So it's all very well what you're doing, but it's learning to make or break those habits. But sometimes it's just deeper, isn't it? So sometimes there's something else going on that, try as they might, it'll be in someone's way. So a story that I've heard that we're going to put up on here is a lady who'd had a condition for 25 years, and she's been able to kind of break some of those psychological cycles she has about the relationship with her food by doing something different for 30 days. So, and I know that's very simplistic, that's not all there is to it. But Ali, tell us a bit about, before we delve into food, what is it you do? How do you help your clients?
So yeah, I am trained as a psychotherapist, and I've actually specialised in self-esteem and relationship, but not couples relationship, which is what everyone thinks, but actually working predominantly with women and young women on relationship with self and how that impacts relationships with others. And I work in the space of what we call psycho-spiritual, which is looking at you holistically, which I know we kind of both share a passion for. So the work I do isn't just about solving a symptom where people come in and they want an external symptom, but it's looking at what's going on for that person as a whole, and looking at what's going on in those layers and how we can really help to get a healthy relationship with ourselves, and then seeing how that impacts everything else. And one of the topics that I talk a lot about is the relationship with food.
I don't know why I kind of guessed that you would have, which is why I asked if you would come and have this chat with me, because there has to be some kind of link, whether it's to trauma or background or anything to do with that. So what do you often find then that, but I mean, I'm not even going to pretend to be the expert, you tell me, what are the kinds of the things that you delve into with your clients?
So on an external basis, a client will come and what they'll talk about is probably their external symptom. And one of those things will be the fact that they don't feel in control perhaps of their food habits, that they are constantly yo-yoing with their diet and their weight. They talk about how they see themselves, whether they like themselves, whether they don't like themselves. And what we see, just looking at this specific relationship with foodship, I call it, you know, because we have friendship, love ship, family ship. We definitely have a food ship, you know, and there's so much else going on. So they're centered on how much is going in or not into their body and what their body looks like. But what we then have to do is find out, why has food become this thing? Because actually food is in our life from day one, you know. It isn't actually a habit we can break. So there is no habit. We have to have food. We have to have nutrients. So that makes it even more complex, but also in some ways, I guess, understandable that because it's there for everybody, it's one of the most common means that people use as a form of expressing how they're feeling about themselves and their body and their general world. It's there for everyone, isn't it?
Absolutely. And do you think that so for my own story, for example, which got me thinking about this, was like, okay, hang on, what's my relationship with food? Is that yes, and people can be so judgy, can't they? So I do promote, I promote healthy living, so I live that regularly. I'm not about to put my hands up and say I'm a saint and don't have a bottle of Prosecco every now and then and a whole bar of chocolate, but there is where my issue comes, is, well, hang on, why can't I just have 2 bits of chocolate? Why do I eat the whole thing? And it's not a question of can't, because it's all choices, isn't it? Whatever we're talking about in life, we're fully in control of our hands and our mouth and our, and our brains. So, well, we're not fully in control of our brains, but
we could be. But,
could be, yes.
Could be.
So I believe myself, for example, that I have a relationship with, I liken it to having a buffet in front of me. If there's unlimited food in front of me and it's yummy stuff, it's as if I can't stop. I can, of course I can, but I love it. And it made me think, is there something about scarcity there in the background? So my little theory myself is that, there were times when I was younger where we didn't necessarily have so much, we didn't have all the snacks and things like that. So did there come a point where actually food was, it's here, if it goes, it's gone?
Yeah.
So that's my own little thing. So do people have those kinds of challenges that you meet, or is it mainly the sort of self-love, wanting to do yourself damage? I don't know. Is that something that can happen?
In very simplistic terms, there's potentially 2 camps. So there is the experience that you've had with food, whether food has been plentiful or not, which can affect how you value food and how you then behave around food. And then there is the camp that says you have, for whatever reason, based on your environment, received messages that have then really sat with you that links your self-worth to your food intake or your body shape, or how much people, value you and like you as a person. And then layered across the top, especially in our Western culture, we have the whole visual media, constantly changing advice. Advice, because it's a fad, isn't it? It's a fad one week, and I often think it's like, what are they trying to flog? What do we need to move in the economy? And suddenly we're all having to eat this or do this, or and what a great topic to be talking about, without going into politics, because now there's this whole kind of war on obesity, and even those words make me shudder. The war on obesity that we're having. So yeah, there's a whole lot going on, but I definitely think that your experience with food will affect you, as will the way food is used as a communication tool for you. And then that can lead to you using food, when you eat too much and you binge, when you restrain and you withhold, that is self-harm. When we talk about self-harm, people they think about the cutting.
Yeah,
there were statistics that came out last year. 1 in 4 of girls aged around 14 were at risk of self-harm, and everyone was like, oh, there can't be that many girls cutting. But self-harm is all these different ways, and food is actually one of the biggest factors in that self-harm bracket.
And that's a very slippery slope, isn't it, particularly at that age, because it can stick for a very long time. Which we don't, it's like everything in society, if we can't see it, it's not a problem. But what I've come to learn is many people suffer from those kinds of experiences and habits, which we think habit, like habit of biting your nails, for example, but no, they're habits and triggers. Like, are they triggers, I guess, that are in your head and reactions that are there
it's
pretty much permanently?
It's actually all less about the food. Most people who have any kind of issue with food, they don't dislike food. They love food. You know, they can appreciate the taste of chocolate or ice cream, or, you know, but the struggle is the interaction with the food. So we're not talking about a group of people that don't like food. You know, they say it's actually less about the food. And food, because it's a constant for us in our life, can also be one of the few things we feel we can control. And if we look at the different, there's a range of phrases that people will be familiar with. So we have anorexia, which is the withholding, you know, and the really calculating of calories into the body, and the over exercising and all of that goes on there. We have bulimia, which is the binge eating, but then the control, and you think, well, that's not control, but the control comes with the purging or the fasting that then happens after that particular, you know, binge happens. And then we have this fairly new category of orthorexia, which is all about people that are trying to limit, you know, the phrase that we've heard a lot is clean eating, you know.
Yeah.
This isn't just about washing your apples before you eat them, you know. This is people who feel they've got to stick to such a strict diet that they are limiting the nutrients going into the body. Feel very stressed if they break that. And there's been a lot of shaming from advocates of different types of clean eating fads, you know, on social media and, you know, Instagram, where their language is hugely important in the relationship with food. And, you know, they've used language that's created a feeling of failure if you can't keep to it, you know. You can't control yourself, then you're a failure. It's this huge thing going on.
Absolutely. And I think there's the flip side as well. So 100%, I like to say to my clients, our plan is about eating. It's not, first off, diet, we don't like the word. I think it was Tom Kerridge who said in his TV program, there's a reason the first 3 letters of the word diet is die. Because people think diet is it is what goes into your body. Everyone's got a diet, but going on a diet is a very different thing. It does make you think of restriction, whereas I like to say actually throw away the scales, the calories, don't look at that. Fat is good. Your brain needs fat. Your heart and your brain need it. So it is about eating, just tweaking what you eat, and it's not forever. So it's like we say about skin. If you've been trying to do something for 6 months and it hasn't worked, it's not working, stop doing it. Because you've just become accustomed to it, it's not working. But for what you were saying, I agree. And on the flip side is true as well, because I specifically remember a moment where I was doing one of my 30 days and I'm not very good at sticking to it. So I will slip every now and then. It's either a glass of Prosecco halfway through, or I don't know, I stick dairy in something or whatever. So it's very rare over 7 years I've done the whole 30 days to a T, but I've had all the benefits. Anyway, the thing that gets me is that peer pressure of, why are you doing that? And I had family over at one point with cake, and I felt such peer pressure that I chose not to have the piece of cake, that I ended up doing it. And I knew as I was doing it, why are you doing this? You don't want to do this. And it wasn't even very nice cake. And I immediately felt I'd let myself down. Do you know what I mean? I'd caved into that peer pressure. So you've got it both ways, haven't you?
One of the conversations, I love all that about throwing the scales away. So I've been quite open that due to bullying in my teenage years, I developed what would have been at the time now diagnosed as anorexia, and food was a control mechanism for me. And my focus was, because no matter how dreadful people treat you as a teenager when you're being bullied, the weird thing is all you want is to be in that group, right? You wouldn't put up with it. Now as a, you know, woman who's nearly 50, I think, why did I want to be friends? But, you know, that's important, you know, in your life. And it became to me You know, if I'm thin and I exercise, then they're going to want to like, I'm going to be more popular, you know. And ever since then, you know, this has fascinated me, this language. And there you have a prime example where you're making a choice to do something for you, okay? But you're still having to consciously and subconsciously justify it. And one of the first conversations that I have with people when we talk about food is getting them to write down, from their point of view, this notion of good and bad, because this is where a lot of the problem comes, because there's no bad food, there's no real good food, there's just food. And with a balanced nutrition, that's great. And you know, so you should be able to decide to do whatever you're doing that you've researched for you, and it shouldn't be about whether there's any guilt attached to having a piece of cake. But we have got this whole thing about good foods, bad foods, good behavior around food. You know, I'm able to not, I never have bread. You know, I never eat bread. Why do you never eat bread? Well, because, you know, it creates, it's like, maybe it doesn't. You know, some people genuinely can't eat gluten. Some people genuinely have issues. But here's another example where we've developed this list of rules, haven't we? You know, and if you're going to do something, then if you break that, oh, that's really bad that you had that piece of cake, you know, and you have all that guilt, and other people feel they can comment on it, you know, and this good and bad view of food and behaviors and habits, that's actually causing a lot of the guilt and the shame. And when there's guilt and shame, we generally struggle to break that cycle, and because we feel ashamed, and then that can be a trigger for you to go back into that habit. So it's this whole cycle that goes on, which is no different to any other habit. If you've got a non-healthy relationship with drink, if you've got a non-healthy relationship with relationships, you know, there's all of this language and stuff that goes on that creates guilt and shame. And food, we are so guilty of guilting people.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the eating bread and the gluten thing, because many, from what I've learned from my nutritional therapist colleague, many people think they have an intolerance to something. But if they were to clear out the multitude of build-up that's going, whether it's free radicals, this, that, or gut, need some gut healing, for example, once that's done, often they find out they can have the thing they didn't think they could have, because their body can cope with it then, because their body's healed. And I guess the same way as the mind, you become the word resilient comes to mind. There's more you can deal with if you've looked after your mind more, isn't there? I guess
absolutely.
I'm glad you touched on alcohol, because I was gonna come to that, to finish on that point. Was it's a bit like the I need a drink, isn't it?
Yeah.
Totally psychological, but obviously very, I mean, I've got someone in this house who does that. I've had a hard day, I'm gonna have that, you know. So I guess, are we in a way a little bit like children in our approach to reward and punishment, I guess, as well?
Yes, and all of this, just to touch on it, because it's important, comes from our own childhood as well. So if you're in an environment where food is used as reward, you know, you've done well so you can have sweets, you've done well so you can have cake, and that's, I'm not saying on an ad hoc basis, okay, you know, I am guilty of that myself, you know, there I go with the guilty word, you know, but if food is the pressure in the house, then all of that's going to stay with you. If you are in a household where you your body shape and your image is commented on, then there's some feeling of reward for yourself if you're able to control yourself, you know, if you're able to withhold from what's going on. So everything, just the same as with any other type of kind of trauma that sits with us, a lot of this is based on what you're hearing in those formative years, and you're carrying it through, and all the life experiences that you have come with it. But at the end of the day, if you train your brain to see food as a reward or alcohol as a reward, it's going to crave it. It's going to psychologically crave it, because otherwise, how do you get that lovely hit of dopamine? How do you get that validation? What you do is say, I've had a really hard day. Oh, I deserve this. And the body goes, yeah, of course you do. That's amazing. Well done you. And you go, oh, that feels nice. You know, so there's so many habits that we would sit down and look at in the whole relationship with food. And I think I just want to say the key thing to, you know, to not get hung up about is you can have a healthy relationship with food. You don't have to avoid any type of kind of programs or food. It's more about how you think about it. So signs to watch for are you becoming a little bit obsessive? Are you getting into this good and bad regime? Are you guilting yourself if you fall off the wagon? You know, are you constantly weighing yourself? Are you constantly judging yourself on what's going on? These are signs where you might want to readjust your relationship with food, because that can be a slippery slope.
Absolutely. Whole bunch of other stuff I want to say in my head about how we consider how we look versus what other people care about is what comes out of our mouths and our hearts, right? So there's a whole other layer you could go into about what you think of yourself versus what other people think of themselves, which, and like you say, those constant messages while growing up, or don't put any weight on, or how do you look with that, or da 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 da. And I can relate to that. But that's been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Ali. I hope it was really valuable to some of the people in my network. And how can people contact you if they would like to have a delve into that, if they feel they have a challenge that could do with a chat with you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Best thing to do is just go to my webpage. All the social media and contact me links are on there, and it's really easy. It's www.bemore.uk.
Perfect. I will also put that in the comments when we post this as well. So thank you very, very much. I'm also here if anyone would like any help with getting an idea around how to be a bit more balanced in what you do day to day, and look at that mind, body, skin connection, and have a happy, healthy summer.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.